You'll never succeed, Dana. My mother's words hit me like a hammer. 3 years later, I sat quietly in the back row of the courtroom, my gaze sweeping over her and my sister. My mother's hands gripped her purse, her face drained of color, on the verge of collapse. My sister clenched her lips, her eyes panicked, but without an excuse. I said nothing, made no move toward them, simply sat there, letting silence itself serve as judgment. The people who had once dismissed and mocked me could now only face my presence, helpless, their regret written plainly in their trembling movements. That day, my mother's words were not casual criticism, they were a verdict. In her eyes, I had never deserved respect. My sister Clara sat on the carpet, hugging her knees, staring at me as if afraid I might suddenly fall apart, yet also silently siding with my mother. My mother's lips curved slightly, savoring my discomfort. Look at you. Leaving home for grad school, chasing degrees? You don't care about the family, you didn't even come home for Christmas. Do you really think you have what it takes? I didn't answer. I bent over to pack my books, carefully organized folders and clothes into my suitcase, each movement deliberate, each one declaring silently, I am here, but I do not belong here. My mother frowned deeper when I stayed silent, grinding her teeth and lowering her voice. You're worthless, Dana. Always have been. I turned to glance at Clara one last time. A flicker of unease crossed her face. She felt my mother's scrutiny and remembered my quiet absence. Then I dragged my suitcase out the door. Winter's cold wind swept through my coat, carrying my mother's words far behind me. 3 years later, I stood in the city council chamber, holding a report, facing a room full of officials and colleagues, and my mother's cold words still echoed in my mind. In that year, I had left our small town, earned a full scholarship, completed dual degrees in political science and public administration, and gained hands-on experience in community service and nonprofit work. Every successful project, every policy recommendation implemented, felt like a quiet ledger, turning their doubts and ridicule into fuel. People had mocked me as too cold, incapable of social warmth, lacking charm. But that very coldness grounded me in the cutthroat council debates. I didn't need to shout or perform. My achievements spoke for themselves. In the years after graduation, I led city housing reforms, revitalizing neglected neighborhoods and providing stable homes for the homeless. I improved healthcare programs so elders in remote communities received timely care. I worked quietly, efficiently, never seeking credit, never competing with colleagues. True power, I had learned, came from being acknowledged silently, not from shouting over the crowd. The courtroom was filled with tension that day. Clara faced her third DUI charge, and I attended as a private observer, quietly sitting in the back. She wore a crisp white shirt, legs crossed, feigning calm. My mother clutched her purse nervously, whispering, "This will blow over, it's just a small thing." I watched them, hands resting lightly on my knees, expressionless. I hadn't come to support anyone. I had come to observe. When the judge entered, a middle-aged man with an unflinching presence, he glanced at the files and then fixed his eyes on me. Squinting slightly, he leaned toward the microphone and said, "Wait. Governor Dana Walsh." The courtroom went silent. Clara's lawyer stammered. The court clerk dropped his pen. Even the bailiff paused. My mother's face went pale. I nodded faintly, calm. The judge cleared his throat heavily. "This case will no longer proceed in the manner your family expected. Dana Walsh, once considered the family's failure, is now the most powerful person in this courtroom." Tension crackled in the air. Every eye turned toward me, even those accustomed to ignoring me. The judge motioned for a brief recess, cautious and respectful. I stayed seated, expression unchanged. Years of cultivating calm had taught me this. You don't need to yell or threaten. Your presence alone can unnerve those who underestimate you. During recess, the judge approached, removing his glasses. Governor, I had no idea. I waved gently. I'm just observing. He nodded, understanding. What had been an ordinary DUI case had transformed into a scrutiny of family and society. When the court resumed, Clara bit her lip nervously, her lawyer whispering urgently. My mother remained rigid, clutching her purse as if it were her only protection. I sat calmly, breathing deliberately, reminding them silently I no longer needed their approval. The case was reassigned to a new judge. The original judge stepped back. Continuing under the prior arrangement would place responsibility and risk squarely on him. Clara tried to plead for my intervention, but I slowly turned to her and said steadily, "Now you finally remember my name." Exiting the courthouse, reporters swarmed with questions. "Governor Walsh, what's your connection to this case?" I did not dodge. "I attended as a private citizen," I said, and walked through the crowd with calm, purposeful steps. Back at the office, my phone rang endlessly, my mother, Clara, other relatives, but I did not answer. My life no longer depended on their approval. That night, I looked out at the city lights, knowing revenge did not require shouting. Demonstrating my power was enough to make them helpless. A month later, Clara's case concluded. Her license was revoked, fines and probation imposed. Family members called, asking me to intervene. I replied calmly, "She's an adult. She must face the consequences herself." No anger, no gloating, just facts. Weeks later, I spoke at a policy summit in Washington. Governors, senators, federal judges, and international observers gathered in the historic hall. I stood at the podium, navy suit immaculate, notes aside, speaking from experience and preparation. I addressed systemic privilege, accountability, and how power does not belong to family ties. No names were mentioned, but everyone understood. Afterward, Judge Levinson approached, shaking my hand. "Your silence in that courtroom taught us all something." I smiled. "Silence is a language. You just decide who deserves to understand it." Days later, Clara came to me, holding an old envelope and photos, her eyes wary yet grateful. "Thank you for not ruining me." I took the envelope, revealing moments of our childhood, playing in the backyard. In that instant, I understood. Revenge was never the point. It was about claiming the respect and power I had always deserved. I placed a photo of myself winning a science fair next to my inauguration photo. Two girls stared back, one once invisible, the other undeniable, both me. I blocked my mother's calls. Not out of anger, but because true power lies in choosing who can touch your peace. Clara's growth was hers to claim. My silence had spoken. My life was no longer dictated by their bias. That night, I sat alone with tea, calm and untroubled. I finally understood that freedom was not in titles or power, but in choosing not to be governed by their judgment. My life belonged to me. The girl once called a failure had built housing, written policies, signed laws. They tried to erase me, but through silence, action, and influence, I carved my name into history. To every underestimated daughter, you don't need their seat at the table. When the time comes, build it yourself.